Representing Captain Charles Earl Bussey and Company I. Tough act to follow. I want to have quite the show. I don't have a guitar in my hand, so I don't feel real comfortable in front of a crowd. But this has been handed down through the family, since the time frame. No verification of who had owned it, where it was carried, or anything like that. The only thing I can figure is it must be like a trophy brought home, because the good captain wouldn't be carrying a rifle.
No.
He'd be carrying, pistol, saber, and whatnot.
What do you suppose the caliber is? 15?
I have no idea, to be honest. I haven't done any research with it, other than just keep it wrapped up and hope it doesn't fall apart. I haven't tried to restore it or anything. I didn't have these at the last reunion. I was still looking for them. But I come across them not too long ago. I've got 3 buttons that have the United Confederate Veterans initials on it, battle flag, and the dates 1861 to 65. I'm guessing some type of reunion.
Those are
memorabilia or something.
Oh, yeah.
One of my prized possessions is this ring here. This was Captain Bussey's daughter-in-law's wedding ring. It was worn by all the women in the Bussey family. And it's too small for anybody to really wear, so I keep it in a jar with those. But that one's been around for a while. My personal favorite, I've got, if I can get the case open. I have Captain Bussey's saber.
Wow.
This particular piece, if only could talk. It's in sad shape. Before it got to me, it was not, preserved properly. I'm afraid to do any kind of restoration on it. I don't know anybody out there that can bring it back to its former glory. So I'm kind of keeping her like she is, like that.
How did you come about it? Just passed down?
It just passed down through the family. I'm the only, or I was the only son with the family name, so I ended up with it. That's all I got.
That's plenty.
That's too much.
One of these days, that thing will be mounted properly.
Are you going to pass it on to another Bussey? Are you going to pass it on to another Bussey?
My son was going to get it. Bitter divorce.
Right. I was having wipe away tears. I'm going to get you to help me on this one, okay?
I didn't do too good last time.
Well, first one,
Reggie Phillips James Herod. He's a long time, 38. A lot of Phillipses.
I'm from Mobile, but as I tell everybody, my family on my father's side is from up here around Groveville, Thomasville, Lucas. I think it was Randall Lucas was supposed to be here. He's coming tonight. He'll be here tonight. And we might have some stuff we exchange, and then Smiths, Ballards, Whites, Singletons. Anybody? Are you a Singleton?
I was.
Okay, you're qualified, I guess. And, but it's just the idea that. And then if there's anybody who has Indian blood, I'm sure we connected somewhere along there too. But this is kind of I guess a smaller as we're going down with this. Because those are great artifacts there. This is the actual. Is there any Meigs here today? Meigs, like Mount Meigs. It would be a little bit safe in this.
Yeah.
Okay. And but anyway, this is an actual pension record. And I have to be very careful with it. But as you well know, the veterans started being taken care of, and this is dated, somebody marked through 1889, and I stand corrected on it, but if there's anybody that would know any differently, we first started issuing in the state of Alabama 1887. And so this is a very early record. And he is listed in Art's book, James L. Meigs. He was a private. And if I can read this just quickly, said he was paid $34.95 on November 7th, 1863 for commutation of rations while on sick furlough September 5th to December 19th, 1863. And file states, see personal papers of Henry C. Barton, Private Company A38, report, deserters and absentees. And also contains a card dated October 24th, 1964, showing deserter. Of course, I don't know if that's necessarily always a bad thing, Art.
Just bad office.
You just need to go play this field or something. And to just give you an idea how close we came to losing a piece of our history. There's a friend of mine, he's an antique dealer, and he called me one day and he said, I have something you might be interested in. And so I went up there to his place, and lived right up the street from him. And so anyway, we're going through, and he's got this little building he keeps outside. And he said, you might be interested in this, because he knew the connection to the 38th Alabama with my ancestry. And sure enough, I wasn't going to let that get past me. But it wasn't, after a sequence of hurricanes came through, that entire building was destroyed, and all the antiques in there that he had stored in there. That is a precious thing. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, Reggie. Let me put in my 2 cents about deserters when we talk. I even hold those guys in high esteem. There might have been some mistakes in the grade there, but I invite you to read a little book called Rebels at Rock Island, if you haven't. In there, pretty well documented that those guys were locked away. They were, first of all, on prison rations. At one point, they were dropped to half prison rations. And they then were given an opportunity to renounce of their heritage in the South and join the Federal Army. You can just step out. Later, it got to the point that every evening at supper mess, when they were issued their half-prison rations, they would drive a wagon through that compound with all sorts of goodies, roast turkeys and roast potatoes and any thing imaginable. And all they had to do was follow that wagon out, and they could be put back on full ration. A number of the people did. A friend of mine out of 38th, said he'd be here today, didn't make it, said that he never knew why one of the brothers from his family went to Texas, sorry about that, after the war. But there was no description. All of them came back home but one. And when he read the book and saw deserter, he realized he could never go home again. But you can almost forgive those individuals given the hardships that they went through and the deprivations they suffered.
I wanted to say what Art, he did quote it probably. What story he told, if you read the, Sons of Confederate Veterans has the magazine that comes out about every month or so. They had United Confederate Veterans magazine. About 1910, there's an article written describing just what Art said. That wasn't a story just made up out of some book someplace. One of the veterans wrote about that. And there was a society, and I forget what the name of the society was, formed at Rock Island to encourage men, to keep them from flipping. What the term that was used for those men at Rock Island and other Yankee prison camps, they would try and make it appealing. You can stay here and rot or die in this prison camp, or you can go west and fight Indians. Well, some did. called galvanized. As a reenactor, we have to galvanize and portray Yankees from time to time. None of us particularly like it, but that's where that term came from. But this is a true story as recorded in United Confederate Veterans. I have the article. One of my friends got it for me. It got that issue of the United Confederate Veterans.
Don't know why they call it galvanized. Why did they call it galvanized? They call it
I
galvanized
don't-
because it was a
there's a
thin
reason
coat
for
of
it.
Yankee on the outside, but there was something underneath.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have my collection of Confederate bills.
Yes.
If y'all would like to look at them. And
Please
I
go
also
on,
have
show
the
them.
June 23rd of 1863, the Boston Journal, pure Yankee. But it is an original copy, and these are original bills. This one was handed down. This one was in the family Bible, and I got it. My mother gave it to me, and she didn't know where it came from, but it was in the family Bible, and that's what got me started getting them. So I have a few for people to look at.
Mark, may I tell a story of
Yeah,
Marvin,
please.
Tennessee? I have some props over here that I need to get. So I'm going to tell you about this sword. Walter Davis is a local expert on old weapons, and he tells me that it's very likely built in Selma, Alabama. This sword was found in the grounds plowing by my fathers and my uncles around this house. This house sits on a hill outside of Hartsville, Tennessee. Hartsville is, if you think of Nashville as being here, Hartsville a little bit up the Cumberland River. From Nashville, almost directly across from Andrew Jackson's house. I told Ellie Williams that I was going to write the story of the Battle of Hartsville and of this house, and she said, please write a story in which the Confederate Army wins. And in fact, they did in this battle. And I'll tell you real quickly what the battle was like. There's an oxbow in the river there in the Cumberland River. The main army was up in Gallatin, but there was a collection of Union soldiers over close to this house, camped all around the house, and Colonel John Hunt Morgan came up on the other side of the oxbow, and on December 7th, at 1862, while the Union soldiers were having their morning coffee, one of the servants of one of the Union soldiers came rushing in and said, the rebels are coming. And what John Hunt Morgan did, was to go up and block off the top part of this oxbow and then went in and attacked. He knew that when the gunfire started, the larger army would come down to try to defend, so he knew that he didn't have very long to defeat. But they were able to capture a lot of troops there and escape across the river, which was frozen at that time, and get away before the larger army got there. So there were all kinds of artifacts that were dug up as my father and his brothers plowed in the fields down below this house. And among the things that were plowed up was this sword. Walter Davis tells me this part right here is not authentic. There used to be a scabbard on it. I don't have any idea where the scabbard is now, or what happened to that. So I did write the story of this house, and the reason I was quizzing you about the railroads, my character walks from Selma up to Nashville, and I had thought he had a choice of going to Atlanta and riding the train up, or going to Mississippi and riding the train up, so I had him to walk up because there are all kinds of fun things that can happen when you're walking.
Jim, wave your book around there. You got a copy here? Jim's got a new book. Just
Well, as a matter of fact, I do have copies. My wife painted the picture that's on the front cover.
And that is that house you described.
And it is about the house. The reason the house is interesting is it was used as a hospital for both the Confederate and the Union soldiers after the battle was over. And in this room on the floor, there's a blood stain. And when I would sleep, my grandparents bought the house in 1900. So when I would sleep in that room, I, of course, would wonder, well, whose blood is this? But they never told me the story except it was a Confederate hospital. And so I thought somebody ought to tell the story, and so I made one up.
Dig down, guys.